it was amazing because I had opportunity to celebrate my birthday online with my viewers from around the world. It was really, really fun, especially when I tried to pronounce the crazy words from their language. It was really cool. But generally, I am a former Ukrainian military. I'm a veteran, reservist. I do YouTube videos speaking about the Russian propaganda, Russian invasion, debunking all sorts of crazy things they say about Ukraine. And also, I'm an anchor at UA TV channel. I really wished our partners, the governments, could do a bit more, because survival of Ukraine is not only survival of Ukrainian people, but also survival of democracy in Europe, and not only in Europe. Right, we're fighting against some pretty nasty terrorist regimes, and I'm not only talking about Russia. I'm also talking about such amazing uh, countries, not countries, but the governments like Iran and North Korea and China that are known for their, let's say, exotic style of governance, right? And I would really like to see our partners do just a bit more to defend ourselves, in terms of our collective security. Therefore, we still rely heavily on decent people from around the world. But luckily for us, there's a lot of those people. I believe that they make generally majority of our population, and I'm really happy that they are watching us right now. So thank you very much for the invitation. I missed you big time. I realized that I really miss the British accent in my life, so much. And also, I'm sorry in advance for like random strange noises you might hear here, because my neighbors are doing renovation or something like that. So if you hear something weird, it's not me. It's not a surprise that they're gathering there at Pokrovsk, because they were doing the same for the past more than a half a year. So it's not the change of strategy, it's most probably change of tactics. They're currently trying to concentrate personnel, concentrate vehicles that they have, but I think that we will see more fast delivery vehicles like golf carts and motorbikes. Before you start laughing, the very reason they use motorbikes is because infantry is very slow. They tend to roam around the area, sending 2, 3, 5 men to the Ukrainian positions, and see where they die, where Ukrainians have concentrated their heavy machine guns and things like that, and where the drones are coming from. And they try to expose Ukrainian positions. But the main idea is that they keep using these tactical small groups when they would send 3, 5 people, and expect that at least one of them finds a gap between positions or digs in, so they could send more. And the reason they use bikes is because infantry is too slow. Infantry makes a great target for drones. That is why they use bikes to literally break through as fast as possible and dig in the places where drones cannot really reach them, like in the tree lines, find some kind of temporary shelter and turn it into a position. So we gotta look at not the number of armored vehicles, armored personal carriers they're concentrating, but at the number of things like that, tiny golf carts and motorbikes. If they're bringing them to the specific position, if they're concentrating them in the same area, it means that they're definitely preparing to do some kind of breakthrough. And also the tanks, the older tanks that they still use as, let's say, makeshift artillery, because T-54, T-55 tanks, those that were made in like 1946, 1947, they are still in use, but they're used as artillery. So they basically bring them wherever they need to improve their artillery capacity. Well, currently I'm working with the UATV. As you probably know, I'm running several segments there related to the updates from the Ukrainian Frontline, recent news and updates in the military industry, different mil tech, all that sort of stuff. I'm reviewing on the UATV and also doing very, very interesting interviews. And that is something, by the way, I've been dreaming about in 2022 and 2023 when Ukraine saw a lot of brave, courageous people from other countries coming to help, volunteers, civilian and military volunteers coming to Ukraine to help us defend ourselves. And already back then, watching that enormous amount of different volunteers and organizations coming to Ukraine, I decided that it would be probably good to talk about them because what they do is crucial for Ukraine and it's important to talk about them so people would remember what they do. And currently I have some very interesting segment on the UATV. It's called Brave Hearts, and it's specifically dedicated to people from other countries who either fight or fought for Ukraine or help us in any other way, journalists, military volunteers, civilian volunteers, etc., etc. So please check it out. So recently, just a couple of hours ago, we finished a brilliant interview with Sean Pinner. So please check it out. Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest narrative that is coming from the Russian propagandists nowadays is that Russia is not your enemy. And that is something, by the way, retransmitted by Orban, by Fico, and other supporters of the Russian terrorism. Some of them are paid, some of them are, of course, just useful idiots. But that is some of the biggest narratives that we can see right now. Basically, it's designed to hypnotize people, just common people, common European public, American public, just to hypnotize them, say we are not your enemies, everything is fine, just let us do what we do and everything will be okay, we will live in peace. And at the same time we can see Russia expanding its military bases along the border with the NATO countries, the Baltic countries, and stockpiling its long-range weaponry, not because it wants to defend itself, but because I believe already every security agency and intelligence agency in European Union already reported that before the end of this decade, we should expect something from the Russian terrorists. I don't know whether they like to overestimate their capabilities, right? On the other hand, of course, yeah, they expected Ukraine to give up in several weeks, and it's been soon it will be like what 2,000 something days, but I believe that what they're trying to show, they're trying to present themselves as this absolutely indestructible power. Of course, it's a psychological warfare, nothing but that. Including Medvedev, threatening the West with nuclear strikes, which will never happen because, of course, Russian oligarchs don't want to kill their own kids studying and working in European countries. We all know that. But Medvedev and Dugin and all sorts of talking heads in the Russian world, they all work very, very hard to establish this image of indestructible, unstoppable Russian bear that is not afraid of anyone and things like that, which is a complete BS, as we all understand. Looking at their failed attempts of capturing Ukraine, 3.5 years they didn't manage to capture even a single major city in Ukraine, and people go like, oh, come on, what about Mariupol, what about Bakhmut? Guys, Bakhmut is 7 kilometers across. It's a tiny town. There's no Berlin after Bakhmut, there's no Washington after Bakhmut. There's just fields and tiny villages populated by like hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, because Ukraine is so big. And we can see that for years already, the front lines are stationary, basically, and Russians are burning uh, companies after companies and battalions after battalions of their men. Uh, why it doesn't happen? Because they already burned all of their tanks and armored vehicles, and they don't have enough. So Russia is not weak, of course, but it's not as strong and as invulnerable as it tries to present itself. And I would really like people from around the world to look at Russia objectively, right? That Russia is just a terrorist regime that massively uses disinformation, of course, but at the same time, it can be defeated. And Ukraine is a good example of how it should be done. First of all, Russia cannot cover all of its territory with air defense. And for example, the recent expiration of their Minister of Transportation, Starovoyt, is a good example of why it actually happened, is because they could not provide enough air defense to cover all the necessary and important strategic objects in Russia. And in the end, they decided to blame Starovoyt for that. However, it wasn't really his fault, right? Ask yourself, why does the front line look the way it looks, right? Why does the front line look the way it does today? And the answer to that is there are multiple different settlements that Russians would love to take, but they don't for some reason. And one of the reasons is terrain. When you look at the given piece of territory, for example, places like Pokrovsk or Konstantinivka or Chasiv Yar, ask yourself, what is the MET-TC, right? What is the terrain conditions there in the area specifically? Because there's a lot of rivers that neither bikers nor Russian infantry can pass. And that is one of the answers. So when you look at places like Pokrovsk, you should also understand not only where Russians can pass, but also where they cannot, right? Where they cannot establish pontoon bridges and things like that, because again, we're talking about drones, and there is no better target than a stationary pontoon bridge that can be easily destroyed by artillery or bigger drones, not FPV drones, but bigger drones. So that may be one of the answers. And currently, we know that Russians are trying to reestablish control over the northern borders. They're trying to create this so-called buffer zone in the area of Sumy, where Ukrainian defenders keep liberating basically village after village. We have a small progress, right, in liberating those villages, but still we're moving forward. However, we can say pretty much the same about Russians who take several square kilometers of territory every single day. Which, by the way, brings us to a different topic, because still there's a lot of people convinced that Russia is making this huge progress. For example, this year they occupied something like 2,000 square kilometers of Ukraine's territory. So in 2022, they would make the same progress on a daily basis. Every single day, because Ukraine is a big country, we have more than 500,000 square kilometers of territory. It's huge. It's second largest, or like it's a discussion, of course, like who's bigger, like Ukraine or France, but it's an enormous country, and Russians would make such a progress in 2022 every single day. And currently, we're talking about the same progress being made within half a year. So that is just to explain that Russians are throwing everything they have. They are using all equipment, all sorts of vehicles that they have in their possession right now, which they don't have much, besides bikes and golf carts, probably donkeys, horses. They ride horses, of course, but they cannot do much because Ukraine has stopped the aggressor, basically. That progress that they're making is absolutely miserable because 2,000 square kilometers of captured territory along the front line as long as 1,200 kilometers. That makes it, very makes one ask a question of how efficient Russian army is if, on average, the whole front line only moved 1 kilometer forward in half a year. So how much time will it take for Russians to capture more territory? How much time will it take for Russians to capture whole Ukraine, or at least the remaining pieces of Donbass and Zaporizhia, and how many men will it take them to sacrifice for that? Because I expect that already next year we'll be celebrating 2 million. I will have cherry ice cream and probably something to drink as well. Yeah, absolutely. But I don't blame you of being alarmist, because year 2020 and 2021, when we saw a bunch of Russian conscripts and professional soldiers training on the Ukrainian border, conducting those massive military exercises, that's something that I was talking to Ukrainian public about, and I was sharing my experience in the anti-terrorist operations zone, joint forces zone, back in those years, and I was trying to maybe not prepare my viewers. It was a Ukrainian channel. It was a YouTube channel in Ukrainian language. I tried maybe not to prepare them, but at least give them some kind of basics, all right? Because it's very, very hard to train an infantryman using a YouTube channel. Like, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, I try to provide them with at least some basics. You have no idea, seriously, how many times people called me an alarmist. They invited me to the Ukrainian television several times, basically, and people were calling me alarmist every single time. You are escalating. You are scaring the viewers.
Don't scare the children.
Yeah, absolutely. Your war is happening somewhere there, 700 kilometers away from Kyiv. Why are you spreading panics here? All right, like, just shut up. But years passed, and sometimes I open my old Ukrainian channel, and I can find several commentaries from people who say, I've been watching your content back then. I couldn't believe that Russia would actually invade us, but I'm grateful for your advice. So nobody pays us to raise alarm, and it's not like we enjoy doing this, but we are doing this because it's important to raise awareness, and it's important to understand that Russia is a terrorist organization, just like Taliban or ISIS, only much worse, having much more funds, much more influence, and it's going to wage World War III against European countries, possibly against the United States as well. And it's United States' biggest adversary. It always was, and it always will be, until some of them disappear, either Russia or United States. Absolutely. Not a lot of people remember that, but Russia was actually one of the first and biggest Hitler's allies. Joseph Stalin was actually a big military ally before the beginning of the World War II, and during the very first year of the World War II, Russia absolutely helped Nazi Germans to rip Poland apart. And they even had that amazing mutual parade in the captured Brest-Litovsk. People can Google those photos. They're still online. Nobody's hiding them. But the problem is people start to forget what it means, what the fascist, what the Nazism really mean, and why they are bad. Because we are talking a lot about never again. We were talking about never again for decades, and now we can see this happening again. And people start to forget about this, why it's bad to repress people of other nations, other races, why it's bad to repress people of other religions, why it's actually bad to build your policy in your country not around uniting different people or uniting different communities, uniting Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, and Christians, but on us versus them. These number of citizens against all other citizens. Why it's dangerous and why it's crucial not to make it happen again. Unfortunately, people start to forget this, and it's absolutely disastrous. We can see this change because this trend basically started in 2022, and since 2022 there's an ever-growing list of names, those uh, mysterious deaths, or how you want to call it, of Russian oligarchs. There's something like 30 plus names, I believe, in Wikipedia. And this trend basically started in 2022. And the reason it started in 2022, again, after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, is literally because problems began to accumulate in Russia, right? Before that, look, the situation was very, very much different. Before that, they would appoint a guy, an official, a governor of a Russian oblast, for example, who had literally carte blanche. He could literally steal whatever he liked. He had the carte blanche regarding corruption, right? But he had to perform his functions. And if he failed, what Russia does, what Russia did previously, they would either banish him or put him behind the bars. This is how it worked back then. They would do that publicly, right? They would just punish him. Currently, the situation is a bit different because back in those days, they would not care much about the corruption, right, in the regions, because even though they were punishing people, but in some extreme cases, generally they would not pay much attention to that. They would close their eyes because there was enough income for Putin and his oligarchs. There was enough income from oil and gas and other resources, primarily oil and gas. Now we can see that the situation is different. First of all, there's not enough money coming from oil and gas these days due to sanctions and other things like refineries, um, burning in Russia here and there from time to time. So they are much more furious because of that. And the other reason is that problems start accumulating. Problems don't disappear. And when you punish someone, the system doesn't change anyways. That is another reason. So when we see someone, walking out of a window, I don't know, due to gravitation changes, or I don't know, draft, or we can see somebody shooting himself twice in the back of the head and stuff, that is because problems accumulate, they don't disappear. And also, those people know too much. For example, if we talk about Starovoyt, his story actually is very interesting because when he was a governor in Kursk and he was basically responsible for building the defense fortifications in Kursk, when he failed, when Ukrainian defenders incurred that region and realized that there's actually nothing was made, right? All the money were stolen. The money were not really stolen by Starovoyt. The money were stolen by military, right? By Russian military. Shoigu wanted a better car, for example. So
extra floor to his dacha, or a mudroom to imitate the Tsar.
Yeah, or I don't know, he wanted buy his wife a better pair of shoes or something, and they stole the money. But who was blamed for that? Of course, Starovoyt, because Putin will not blame generals, right? And then when Starovoyt was assigned as a Minister of Transportation, again, he faced a lot of very, very big challenges and problems, not only related to the Russian aviation, but also other spheres like underfunded Russian railway, completely degraded logistics, and of course, the aviation that was frequently paralyzed by Ukrainian drones, not because Ukrainian drones were attacking Russian airfields, of course, but because Russian air defense failed. First of all, they of course didn't want to shoot down their own jetliners, and second of all, because they didn't have enough air defense on the first place. Because Russia is so big and there's so many different objects that require air defense protection. Some of them are very important, like, for example, those 10 castles of Putin, his 10 palaces, and each of them requires a Panzer or Tor system to be installed there to defend their Tsar. So when he faced those challenges, again, it wasn't really his fault. It was the fault of the Russian military. But they decided to make him a scapegoat and basically punish him because I think he would not survive because he could tell a lot about Russian corruption in the military. And that was the primary reason why he was basically eliminated using his own gun. In any dictatorship, there is a distorted feedback from the society coming to the dictator himself. Um, like you can see many examples in the history, right? And it's the same with Putin. Putin receives distorted information from his subordinates, but at the same time, Putin is not the only person who does business, right, in Russia and outside, because Russia is basically a big collective Putin of consisting of different smaller versions of him working in the field of disinformation, working on the front line in the media, etc. So there is definitely a lot of distorted information coming to him. Imagine being the one who has to tell Putin that, for example, Prigozhin is launching a mutiny. Like that is crazy. You would have to drink some kind of specific tea that day, I think. But speaking of enabling Russian terrorism, that is definitely a big threat. It continues to be a big threat because nowadays, not only this threat is coming from paid propagandists, talking heads on the screens that we can see in the Twitter or YouTube, but also coming from the world leaders. And of course, Trump is the person who definitely enables Putin's terrorism, enables the Russian terror in the media. That is extremely dangerous for absolutely obvious reasons. Speaking of Europeans, we can see a shift in people's analysis or people's probably standpoint, even because in 2022, 2023, looking at what Russia does in Ukraine, everybody were like, first of all, they were like, thank God it's not us, thank God it's not like Germany or France. And second thought was, we have to stop it somehow. But how do we do that? Russia is such a big country and yada yada, they're powerful and strong. Then 2023, 2024, the perception of people basically changed because they saw that even though, like, if you're not completely blind, you understand that Russia basically stalled in Ukraine. Russia cannot do much. You can see tens of thousands of videos showing Russian soldiers becoming a fertilizer en masse in Ukraine. You can see that Russia is not even using much armored vehicles anymore during their military operations, though they continue burning 1,000 people every day. Sorry, Russians. But they can still see that Russian invasion is basically stalling. They don't reach any significant success for several years already. And that's when people's how to say opinion changed a bit. All right, so when it changed from oh my God, Russia is such a big country to what the hell is going on there? Russian soldiers are dying. They cannot do much. They cannot reach their military, strategic, and even operational objectives for many, many, many months. And basically, they are not successful in Ukraine. Russia is being choked by the sanctions and stuff like that. Um, this moment became very, very dangerous for Putin because Putin realized that he's losing the informational war. He is losing, the war of images, of saber rattling, this kind of war. You have to be either strong or you have to show that you're strong if you're not. And we can see that the only strength in Russia is basically a lot of orcs that can be easily disposed on the battlefield in order to reach some kind of tiny and miserable result, like taking a tree line or taking a tiny village in Ukraine. So this moment became extremely dangerous for Putin and for his propagandists because they realized that if it continues like that, they will lose the informational war. And then basically Europeans become more firm in their own decision to, for example, completely isolate them economically, because the only real thing that can destroy Russia really fast is complete economical isolation. That is why they started inviting Tucker Carlson. That is why they started inviting European and American journalists and bloggers and teach them how Russia Today works, how they make news. This is why they started growing their informational ecosystem of those propagandists working nowadays. And that is why they are also extremely happy to have Trump as American president, because Trump is the person who literally enables Putin anywhere. Putin arrived to Alaska, he arrived to American soil, he walked down the red carpet, he watched Trump's airplanes flying in the air, oh my God, it was such a show. And on the in the end, what we have as of late 2025 is the moment when Europeans, European leaders, European decision makers are looking at Putin, and they understand that Putin, unfortunately, is the person that they will have to probably not appease, but coexist with. All right. And the most dangerous thing is someone is knocking on my wall. Oh my God. The most dangerous thing that we're facing nowadays is that in the society, there's an opinion that we would better live in peace with Russia. And the question is, what will be sacrificed for this peace? I'm talking not Ukrainians, I'm talking French, Germans, Americans, and primarily people living in Europe, of course. We should live in peace with Russia, and what should be sacrificed for this peace? Which brings us to this old topic, of Tucker Carlson or like Joe Rogan. Ukrainians, why don't you just die and stop harassing us? We lived so well, with Russians by our side, and then you decided not to die. You decided to defend yourself. That's just my opinion. The question is, where does this come from? Does it come from the level of government, or does it come from the level of paid media, paid propagandists? That is a question. Absolutely. And Ukraine, to many, like, if you don't understand how to percept Ukraine, all right, Ukraine is like that exotic post Soviet Eastern European country that is populated by good guys, all right. Guys that don't want to kill you, guys that gave up their nukes for you, and basically they want to be your best friends. So that is Ukraine, the way that you can imagine it. Everything else to the north and to the east from Ukraine is basically it's not worth going. I would say you're partially right, and the case of Belarus is the same as the case of Russia. There are good people, all right, but the fact is they don't live there. So there's tons of amazing Belarusian people, for example, those fighting in the regiment of Kostuy-Kalinovsky for Ukraine against the Russian invaders. There's a lot of amazing Russian people that again don't live in Russia. They either live somewhere in Thailand, like my bro sanctioned Ivan, or in Canada, like the Russian dude with the most blue-yellow channel on the whole YouTube, or they are actually fighting in the units of the armed forces of Ukraine, like the Russian Legion Freedom for Russia or Russian Voluntary Corps, Siberian Battalion. There's a lot of amazing people who don't live in Russia or Belarus for obvious reasons. So, first of all, there was an amazing movie about the MH17, actually. And this one is, I absolutely advise everyone to see, people who want to understand Ukraine before the full-scale invasion more. The period between the Russian hybrid invasion of Ukraine and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's when part of Ukraine was occupied by the hybrid Russian troops. And basically, this movie that was produced in Ukraine, that was made and actually presented in Ukraine for the first time, I believe in 2023. This one is absolutely worth watching because it's very powerful. It's very strong, and not only emotionally, but in terms of the whole, I would say, atmosphere in that area. In Donbass, the people there, the locals, the Russian hybrid troops, the way they behave. So I would say that one is absolutely, absolutely worth watching. We should also consider the psychological state of Putin at this very point, because, again, if previously his people, right, his assigned governors could steal whatever they liked and stuff. Nowadays, the situation is different because Putin has so many problems that he cannot solve, like, for example, demographic situation in Russia, like uh, decline in fertility, right, in his population, like social problems. There's Russian widows and mothers that keep protesting and getting arrested, of course, but this attracts attention to the problem. The people are not satisfied with what is happening. Like financial problems, of course, because there's a growing number of disabled Russian invaders returning home, and also paying out all sorts of compensations and pensions to the widows and mothers and relatives and yada yada. And he's trying to balance all that, understanding also that the economical situation in the country, the food prices and everything else, also requires managing, and it cannot work like that, all right? No matter what kind of country you are, but it won't work like that magically just because you told the prices to stay low. No, there are rules, right? And it won't function like you wish, especially if you are in such state as Putin right now. And what it all results into a very, very interesting phenomenon. So you can only visit your Tsar bringing him good news, right? Tavarish Putin, today we gloriously captured like a village of, I don't know, Andrusivka by sacrificing 3 battalions of your glorious soldiers. You gotta bring him only good news, because otherwise he gets really upset and angry, and it often results in things like we can see with Starovoyt, for example, because in just 2 days of failed air connection, right? In just 2 days of all those aircraft being grounded in Sheremetyevo, in Pulkovo, they've lost $250 million, which is a lot. And people get dissatisfied, people get mad, because not only they cannot fly to like their, I don't know, to Turkey, right, to a resort, but also they cannot tell about it to their relatives, because mobile network also failed, because they shut down mobile communication every time there's a drone strike in Russia. And Putin gets absolutely mad when they visit him with bad news. That's why they prefer coming and to their Tsar, right, on an appointment with good news, and trying to, appease the Tsar, like we are so good, we're doing very, very well. Um, so in my opinion, it is possible that such actions, right, stealing from his own loyals and eliminating people who work for him, it's not just a signal, all right, and it won't keep them under control for a while. I think that it actually may result in uprising, right? And I would not bet that it will happen tomorrow, but it can result in a chaos of collapse in management, when the elites would demand Putin to resign, and they might stop following his orders. It may also result in a curious accident, resulting in Putin becoming a better person somewhere, in a car crash or whatever. Such cases do happen, and generally, in such cases, everything collapses very, very fast. Like with Ceausescu, of course, it's like a very, very good example that we would really like to see applied to Putin's situation, right? And generally, like, of course, optimists inside ourselves can imagine, Putin being executed in front of Kremlin as much as we like, but facts will be different. I think that, when Putin passes away, it will be like it will probably mirror the situation with Stalin. I think that they will literally bury Putin, and there will be like a lot of people crying, and then they will say, "Well, yeah, fact is uh, he overreacted. All right, he overreacted. Actually, he worked well for our well-being and welfare. So now we don't have like 2/3 of Russians using outhouses because they don't have sewage. Only 1/3, right? But generally speaking, he was like too harsh. All right, so probably he did something wrong here and there and attacked Ukraine, which we could avoid actually, and eventually they will start, begging for excuse time to
It
time.
wasn't us. We had nothing to do with it. That was the regime. It wasn't us.
We were following orders. We were commanded. We could not do anything. Putin was so scary. Yeah, and now we're so sorry for all those Ukrainian people that we killed with our bombs and missiles while we were like, I don't know, enjoying going to Turkey or Egypt, So this is one of the possible scenarios that I can see. Again, of course, I would really like to see the Ceausescu scenario applied to him, but realistically speaking, I think that this is something that we will see, because history, one way or another, likes to repeat itself. One thing that I still cannot understand is, this amazing British immunity to Russian propaganda and, this like expansion of Russian culture, which is extremely dangerous. You can check out YouTube. You can see a lot of videos about how to be Russian, or like Russian person like in the West and shit like that. But when you think about what are the goals, all right, what is the reason Putin attacked Ukraine? First of all, he never explained the real reasons because he needs some kind of plan B. If his invasion of Ukraine fails, what will he say? And I keep thinking that in around 2026, maybe middle, maybe late 2026, we will see, for example, Russia proclaiming this huge victory over European Nazism, and they will say, okay, we grabbed this piece of Ukrainian land. We, reached our goals, and basically, hooray, Putin is victorious. And this is something that might happen. And frankly speaking, even people in Russia, they will be extremely satisfied with Putin capturing not the whole Ukraine, but like piece of Ukrainian land, because it makes them invaders, it makes them conquerors, it makes them cool, brings some kind of sense, to their existence. But if you want to understand the real goals, the true intentions of Russianism, you gotta watch the content that they make for their internal audience. Not what they say to you because they always lie, but what they say to their internal audience. And what they say is, we will do it again in Berlin. We can repeat. Okay, there's a lot of Nazism existing in Europe, Nazi countries like France, Nazi countries like Estonia, like Italy. We will deal with them as well.
Finland,
The,
Sweden, all Nazis. I mean,
of course, of
yeah.
course. And everybody is Nazi and gay and Satanist, and only the Holy Russian Empire has, capability to deal with them all. And you can see tons of content made by some of the most prominent Russian propagandists where they discuss how much time will it take for example, Russian paratroopers, those who died in Hostomel, for example, how much time would they take for them to take Eastern Germany once again, because they were already there back in the days, right? How much time will it take for Russian tanks that in fact are either primarily burnt around Bakhmut, or like the tanks that they have now are
A
like
rusting
70 years
scrap
old.
across eastern Ukraine.
Yeah, how much will it take for the Russian museum tanks to reach, for example, Prague? Again, because they've been to Prague, okay, previously, and they already have that experience. They make a lot of content for their internal audience, like they are like crazy. They're behind the wall. I'm very, very sorry. Um, I curse a lot when I read Ukrainian writers. Actually, some of them are good. Uh, Yuri Kidruk is very, very nice. He's writing a lot of very, very good fiction, and he's basically like Stephen King. All right, only Stephen King is pro in horror genre. Yuri Kidruk is very, very good in different techno thrillers, and he studies his works like before making a book. He studies the topic throughout. So he wrote a lot of great books, and that's some of the writers that I can advise. And another one is Max Krivtsov, call sign. I think his call sign was Dali. In my brigade, it was Dali. So Max Krivtsov was my close friend. He was a poet. We were approximately the same age, and we served in the same brigade in the same company when it was only created. And after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, he joined the armed forces of Ukraine. And unfortunately, he died last year, but he managed to publish his um, book of poems, and his poems are actually. I laughed a lot when he was reading his poems somewhere, in the training camp in the tent, because like he wasn't big friend with rhymes, you know, and his poems were like extremely. I considered them extremely naive and stuff, but. Now, when I read them, I realize that they were actually enormously deep as his soul, and that if you want to learn more about this amazing man, you absolutely gotta check this one out. Oh my God, are we going to talk about Trump again? Jesus Christ, this topic never changes since like January this year. Oh my God. Yeah, I will be ranting a lot. And when I first saw that amazing peace deal coming from Trump Peace Dealovich himself,
Peace deal. Yeah.
yeah, Trump Peace Dealovich. So I had an impression that it was literally dictated or even written completely by Russian nationals, and for some reason, I literally feel like the same, like subtle feeling of the same horror, all right, regarding their national security strategy. So. I just don't know. Fortunately and luckily for me, I am not an American person, and I don't know much about this. That is why the horror I feel now, it's I'm horrified just this much. So I'm not sure if I should be like, "Who? All right, like it's better than it seems," or I should be horrified even more. So I'll better remain, in somewhere in between. You're not. The thing that I've heard many times, coming from the United States, specifically coming from MAGA related or Trump related speakers, is that Europe is constantly violating the freedom of speech. United Kingdom is constantly violating freedom of speech. Germany is violating freedom. Like, you're serious? Banning journalists, banning the media outlets from accessing the White House, from participating in the White House press conferences. Isn't that an attack on freedom of speech? I'm sorry, but this is fact. This is what is actually happening, all right? And whatever reason you pull out, like, no, if you're fighting for freedom of speech, you should fight for the freedom of speech equally for everyone, right? So the question is when, because, for example, comparing Russian society to European society, I don't know, like pick any European country. Imagine this country is under attack. All right. So imagine like the hybrid warfare scenario, like the Green Man, all right, emerging somewhere in Spain or France, in some of the regions, and taking control over it, speaking like in French or Spanish with a bad accent, wearing Russian uniforms and saying like we are locals. I'm local French, right? And what happens next? Of course, if the country starts mobilizing people to defend the country, like the land, what will we see eventually in this country? Eventually, we will see a lot of civilian unrest because people got used to having good life, welfare, and things like that. And all of a sudden, like someone attacks them, these guys want to put uniform on you and like throw you into battle so you die and stuff, and people will get mad and upset. In Russia, it's different. In Russia, they send you abroad, right? Even though nobody attacks Russia, really. but they send you abroad and you say, yes, we have to fight. We have to fight because this is our existential fight for world domination. Because otherwise, it's either we kill the rest of the world or the world collect this group of Nazis surrounding our mother Russia will be killing us. They will bring gays and black people, and Jews, and they will occupy our churches. Can you imagine a black priest in the Russian church? Can you imagine that? Or worst of all, if he's a gay, what will happen to our children? And this is why they fight, because in the end, all of that depends on your communication with your society and the way you communicate and explain problems, right? If you explain your population that, guys, we actually have to fight just a bit, all right? We will win, of course, because they're absolute imbeciles over there, right? Fighting against us using like Chinese golf carts. So here's the thing: we gotta build a bunch of drones. They will be, of course, snatching our technologies, but we will build better and better drones every single time. We'll be two steps ahead, and because we also have help and assistance from our allies, we'll be able to fight back. It will take time. Somebody will die, of course, unfortunately, but this is the necessary thing. That this is something that we are facing, and there's no other option for us, guys. Realize this. But eventually we will win. What we have to do is just eliminate enough of their manpower so they're not able to fight back, and then eventually something cracks in their system. Again, we will use our influence, right, our informational sources, and we will win. So that's the plan. Expect that we will win in like 3 years, all right? Roughly, roughly. It's a long time, but comparably short. And people understand and they listen to you. In case of Russia, it sounds a bit different, right? They go like, there's a bunch of Nazi and gay and Satanists and black people and Jews. And if we don't fight, they will eventually all attack us and kill us. So we have to bravely fight against French Nazi, against German Nazi, against British Nazi, against American Nazi, like our glorious grandparents did. And then eventually we will win, because no matter how many Russians will die, but we will keep going, because this is the way we fight. And Russians go like, all right. And of course, you have a chance to snatch like a new toilet or a air conditioner and put it in your apartment building in Uсть-Pizdюйsk, and you will be happy, right? So make your wife happy. So that is the difference between like two approaches between two countries. And Russia will not protest like people in Europe for a very simple reason, because the life in Russia is already suffering, right? The life in Russia is already a horror. People who come from other countries to Russia, they might probably notice that if you go like 50 kilometers from Moscow, you see that life in other towns besides Moscow and St. Petersburg is a bit different from what they show in Russia today, and those beautiful pictures and all those.
Well,
Uh,
Mr. Tucker Carlson's, infamous little videos from.
yeah, yeah, those beautiful Moscovian subways. Go to Omsk, dude. Seriously, go to Omsk and check it out. You can even just Google dirty Omsk. You will love it. All right. And because the life in Russia is suffering already, they will not protest because they got used to it. They don't understand that there might be something better. When they invaded Ukraine, when they went to Kyiv Oblast, I remember those days clearly, because Kyiv was under siege, right? We're fighting that region. They were so much impressed. Then when you go into a barn on a Ukrainian farm, right? And you see that the windows in the barn where Ukrainians keep their cows are made out of glass and plastic, right? Like all modern windows in the world. They were crazy. They were making videos. They were like, look, Luda, look at this. Those holes are crazy. We have to kill them. They don't have right to live better than us, right? those rich bourgeois. So that is literally the difference, so people could understand. The reason United States failed in Afghanistan was literally that, because Afghani guys, they don't care. They got used to live in medieval times where they have nothing besides sandals and rusty AK, all right? This is their style of life that they got accustomed to. And you will not scare them with, like, I don't know, threat of death. Like, are you kidding me? Like, their whole life is basically threat of death every single day. You either die from hunger or you're getting eaten by like a mountain lion, or you die of poverty or disease. They don't care. Same with Russia, basically, on a bit a different scale, but generally it's the same. For their internal audience, tons of this content is dedicated to how we restore the Soviet borders only, in terms of modern Russia, how we restore the borders in terms of the Warsaw Pact, basically. And this is one of the goals that I can see, because Russia is an empire that only exists because it expands. And if it stops expanding, it will basically collapse, because this is the only thing that historically and scientifically makes an empire an empire. And based on what they say to their internal audience, I make a conclusion that their primary goal is to expand further towards Eastern Europe, towards Eastern Germany, Baltic states, of course, and Baltic states are in huge danger right now, enormous danger. Based on fact that most probably we will not see the US supporting their NATO colleagues anymore in case of Article 5 being triggered. So the danger there in the Baltic states is absolutely enormous. The Suval corridor, Lithuania, Estonia, they are in big danger. As well as Germans. We can see that Germans are training. German army is preparing for whatever they might face in the nearest future. I believe before the end of the decade, we will see that. Another disturbing fact is that even despite throwing massive numbers of long-range drones and missiles at Ukrainian cities, Russia keeps stockpiling its strategic reserve that it mostly spent on Ukraine. So they are restoring their strategic reserve. Ukrainian main intelligence directorate is talking a lot about that they keep piling up their missiles. Where or how will they use those missiles in the future if not against Ukraine? Well, that is basically the answer. We have plenty of countries that are unfortunate enough to have Russia as their closest neighbor. I think that Sasha should definitely go to like Kalima, because I talked a lot about Kalima in my videos, because this is the land that you should really see if you want to feel how the rest of the Russia outside of Moscow, outside of St. Petersburg, really lives, right? And I doubt that we will see Sasha going to Kalima anytime soon, because there's like literally whatever is in your viewfinder is absolutely hilarious. But not just Kalima, places like Ussurisk. My God, like basically rest of Russia. All right.
You could give us a huge long list, and it would be endless.
Yeah, like you spit in the Russian map, you go there and you can see the reality, right? Whatever is happening around Moskva, Podmoskovia, in those suburban areas in Podmoskovia, does not really reflect the reality, because Podmoskovia is for the rich people. That is where they have their houses that were built by stealing money from the rest of the Russian population. But you actually touched a very sensitive topic on, trying to compare. Okay, Russia has propaganda, but who doesn't have propaganda on a such scale? Really? In a country where you have literally no independent media? Seriously? And if you have an independent media, basically you risk of waking up behind bars tomorrow or drinking some tasty polonium, accidentally. Seriously, the freedoms of speech are being attacked everywhere, wherever you go. Yeah, take an empty banner and stand on the street and look what happens to you. Pretty much nothing if you do it in like Germany or whatever. Do the same in Russia. Try, all right? Or I don't know, the most dangerous people in Russia right now are basically Russian cops, the criminal enforcement services. So just go and talk to them, right? Just do that. Just try to establish communication with the cop. You will wake up behind bars without your phone. And
If you're lucky, a lot worse could happen to you as well.
yeah, I can literally see a flashlight glowing through the hole in my wall. I think that we have some guests joining us. Again, I'm very, very sorry,
That's okay. We
for
can't
turn.
hear it, but this is intriguing. They trying to break through, or
Yeah, I literally I thought that I have like hallucinations. They punched a hole in the wall. Oh my God, this is beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting that you are calling it for what it is, the regime, because it like that's the actual term for this. So I am not really excited or optimistic about the future, but again, we will see. There will be elections in the United States soon, so we will see how things will turn out. But one thing I will tell you for sure is that we can already see processes that I've been talking about already in 2023. And that are already taking place. In 2023, I was invited by the Ministry of Defense of Netherlands to a congress where I basically said that if Russia invades, or when Russia invades, it will not invade with tanks. It will invade you with different people that will be pushing your country to exit NATO, exit EU, etc., etc. And we can see that happening already today. What was his name? Massey, I think, the American congressman who already registered a project of a law for exiting the NATO. He said
yes,
that NATO is a Cold War relic, and today, basically, United States don't need protection, all right, from such an enemy, and yada yada. And he offers to concentrate on investing those money into defense of United States versus spending them together on the common budget in NATO. So I understand that nobody will vote for that project. 100%. I understand that, but it's already a dangerous sign because to those people, and especially people in the MAGA community who think that United States can stand against Russia easily. Like, I applaud to them, but at the same time, we can see growing cooperation between Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, India, and other countries. Cuba, all right, Cuba is very, very close to the United States. We understand that neither Russia nor China nor United States will be using their nuclear weapons if they're attacked by a nuclear country for obvious reasons, because both sides want to leave. But at the same time, both sides can fight conventionally. Can United States stand alone after after it has exited NATO? Can United States stand alone against combined armies of China, North Korea, Russia, I don't know, India, you name it, Iran? Can they defend themselves well? Can they be sure that this time the war also will take place outside of the American border, and they will not see those hundreds and thousands of long-range drones coming to the American land from all the directions. Or it's still better to remain in the defense alliance and make sure that we all can protect each other collectively. That is, again, very, very dangerous isolationism that only leads to a disaster and defeat, and people should understand that. Unfortunately, we can see the same movements already growing in European countries, Germany, AfD, and other countries as well. So we should be very, very much aware about this, but at the same time, we should be aware of what Russia really is, because Russia keeps pushing its main narrative that we're not your enemies, all right? So you don't have to fight against us. Everything will be fine. You should only understand Russia, all right? And basically everything will be good. So that is something extremely dangerous. If NATO collapses, then basically we can expect the war against us, waged by the terrorist federation, in extremely short terms. If I was Netanyahu, I would not really call Putin, because ask yourself, why is all Hamas and Hezbollah armed with Russian Kalashnikovs? All right, like question number one. Question number two is, I would not be proud of calling Putin and calling him my friend like Trump does, because generally speaking, being friends with terrorists, Netanyahu is fighting against terrorists and calling other terrorists that supply his terrorists. That is absolutely
It's incredibly messed up, isn't it?
yeah, and at the same time, calling Putin his friend, calling a terrorist someone absolutely ridiculous and atrocious as Putin his friends, especially in Trump's case, that is not something to be proud of. That's like calling, I don't know, Epstein his friend. Oh, wait a minute. Absolutely, but I see, looking at Epstein's background and what he did, I think that it's not surprising that he had connections, right? Because there were reasons for him to be potentially recruited, potentially. Yeah, absolutely. It's very dangerous because Russians are using this approach. Why destroy the United States if they can render them, let's say, defenseless? So basically, Russia can do whatever they like. They can conduct terrorist attacks and things like that in Ukraine, other countries, in the informational space, and basically United States will not react at all, which is something that fits Putin completely. And basically, I see why they might celebrate this decision. The reason this decision was made in the United States is beyond me. Of course, I don't have much information to analyze it, or to ask people. I don't have people in the White House, not today, but this is extremely dangerous. The problem is Russia is utilizing all sorts of measures. There's a lot of different communication companies working in Russia and serving Russian government. Um, Besides Russian external intelligence service, SVR, besides GRU-GSH, there's also a bunch of literally commercial communication companies that serve the interests of Kremlin. And what do they do? Basically, they create fake websites. They have whole teams who create fakes and disinformation. They have whole groups that create bot farms to spread this disinformation and things like that. And of course, this must have some kind of reaction from the company, from the country that is being attacked. specifically the United States. But unfortunately, there's the number of agencies that could react to that, and amount of forces that could react to that is unfortunately decreasing. Speaking of Margarita Simonyan, I'm not really worried about her. Neither I'm like extremely happy, even though I am. But I'm not worried about people like Margarita Simonyan, because if she disappears for some reason, then there will be another one. Russia is a land that breeds people like Margarita Simonyan. This is what makes them Russian, basically, what they do. Um, but speaking about the propagandists, of course, I think that misinformation in 2025 must be, of course, prosecuted. And it's a crime. Misinformation, as well as, I don't know, you call it solicitation, right? That's basically the same kind of crime. And there must be something done on the level of governments to prosecute misinformation. People who want to speak freely must have this opportunity in the safe environment. Misinformation is nothing about safe environments. If you want to have your rights and freedoms and opportunity to speak freely, you must have safe environment that is free from misinformation and disinformation that are completely destructive tools used by terrorist states like Russia or China in order to reach their geopolitical goals that, again, are never aimed at something good. The only thing they produce is basically disinformation, destructive content, content that doesn't motivate people. They only demotivate the consumers of this content. This is why, in my opinion, that the governments should implement mechanisms to combat the disinformation and to make this probably change the legislation, to make people that were accused and confirmed in spreading disinformation, make them accountable, make them responsible for what they do in frames of law. Now they have purpose. Well, they can accidentally die, of course, right? In the field somewhere, hit by a drone. But now they have a mission in their life. And this is something that Russian ideologists are talking about a lot. Take Dugin, for example, right? Or what the way Putin framed it recently in his interview, he said, wherever the Russian soldier steps, that land is Russian, basically. So it's like if you send your soldiers to like London, right? It's a Russian territory now. People don't understand this stuff, guys. They are invaders. The whole Russian Empire literally lives, survives because they invade other countries, and they will keep invading no matter what, because otherwise they will just collapse because they have too many other problems inside of their society to deal with. And the only thing they can distract attention and survive, basically, is through invading other countries, Georgia, Syria, African countries, sending their mercenaries there, getting like diamonds and gold and stuff. This is the way they survive. This is the way Russian Empire became so big. Again, not because Chukchas or Yakuts liked balalaika, vodka, and matryoshka. No, it's because they were conquered and their national identity was erased, just the way they're trying to do with Ukrainians right now. Speaking of Vorkuta, by the way, I would really like our viewers to check out. I'm not sure if they have like Google Street View, but that would be an interesting experience. At least they can Google some pictures from Vorkuta, because just a couple of days ago I was Googling this city. I was like literally randomly pointing at the map in Russia, checking out Google Street View from different places, and Vorkuta is something amazing. Like, of course, it looked much better in the 90s. I agree because it was like 30 years ago, and if you don't care about your town for 30 years, then of course it might degrade, especially in Russia, especially in Vorkuta. So I would encourage our viewers to check out Vorkuta, Omsk,
It's
cities like
extraordinary.
that.
Yeah. Correction, unfortunately, the film is called Irona Sudbi or Lokim Param.
Oh my God, how
Oh
could
my
I
God.
forget? Basically, it's because
Wait.
I'm not a big fan of Russian cinematography, of
Of
course,
course, you've
especially
every right to forget and, put it out of your mind.
especially Soviet cinematography, because there's so many things that were literally snatched from Western culture. For example, Winnie the Pooh, right? That is like a good example of how Russians literally take what is yours and present as if they made it. And when Russians talk about those cartoons, for example, made in the Soviet times, they say, "Oh, those American cartoons with like Tom and Jerry, they suck. Donald Duck, he's so stupid. Look at this highly intellectual Russian Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and everybody else. They're like, and I have like probably as majority of Ukrainians, I have this kind of allergy, to Russian propaganda, no matter if it's presented in like movies. Several things. First of all, the drone that got through the air defense was some kind of new sort of drone because there were several reports. I was following that strike, and there were several reports on some new drones that Russians are utilizing now. They fly at extremely low altitude and they don't produce much sound. So they are much harder to detect. And there are some rumors on what sort of drones Russia could have used that time. But we can see that they're improving their weapons to use against us. And as for the American enterprise that was hit in Western Ukraine, we shouldn't expect Trump to have any reaction regarding this. I think if people didn't understand this already, then not much we can do, unfortunately. We cannot help you. I'm sorry. But by this time, it's September 2025, and we all had to already come to conclusions that Trump is not going to react to Putin destroying American enterprises, American companies in Ukraine, capturing American companies in Ukraine, because there's hundreds of American companies that are currently on the Russia-occupied territory being completely looted and literally robbed by the Russian terrorists. There will be absolutely no reaction. Putin can literally kill and strike as many Americans in Ukraine as he likes. There will be absolutely no reaction from Trump. Don't even expect that. Speaking of European offices in Ukraine, in Kyiv specifically, those that were hit, I worked in the World Bank, and yeah, it doesn't feel good. But I think Trump would even celebrate the strikes on the European offices um, in Kyiv, because we all know how much Trump loves his European colleagues. And basically,
Zero respect, really. Yeah.
yeah, I think he supports Putin with that because we already know several cases when Trump would say that he would even encourage Putin to attack European countries. Um, he said what he said. Basically, you cannot erase that. Let's look at the facts, and the facts are saying that these deliveries of weaponry to Ukraine, they are being also choked and throttled, and recently we had several reports from the people on the ground who say that unfortunately we see that the number of, for example, anti-air missiles that Ukraine has, this stockpile is depleting, and those that were supposed to arrive from the United States, they arrive irregularly, and even with that, they are like the amount of them is very low. So there's a big risk of actually losing the air war, I mean, the air defense, the capability to defend our cities from the Russian strikes. This is something that, again, I was talking about probably last year and early this year during Trump inauguration. That unfortunately, if things keep going like that, then we will see growing number of casualties among civilian population. And this number is actually growing. So Trump is more than half a year is leading the United States, leading the administration, and during these half a year, during the 6 months, we can see that unfortunately the number of civilian casualties is growing in Ukraine. So while Trump is president, the number of casualties grew dramatically. In March, there was
Mm.
the biggest attack with the biggest amount of victims compared to even September 2024, which was extremely gruesome in terms of civilian casualties. Of course, there's a lot of obvious things that we can do by talking to our elected officials and by posing sanctions, and those things are obvious, all right? They must be done by default. But there is another very crucial thing is communication with your relatives, with your friends, with people you know, actively participating and engaging in conversations in on the forums and the social media. This is something that unfortunately now we have to do as active members of the society, right? And there is not enough of me or Jonathan Fink anymore, unfortunately, or other amazing people. However, Jonathan does a lot of great stuff, but it's not enough because we are fighting in the era of artificial intelligence and AI-powered bot farms and things like that. And we live in the era of massive disinformation that is being spread in the social media and in the society itself. So we have to find a way to oppose it. One of the best ways is to, of course, expose Russian lies, expose disinformation, because we have all the necessary tools that we can use. On the webpage of the Propaganda Study Institute, for example, you can find this big library of Russian myths and disinformation that are easily debunked and like with several facts, so you can use those. And another thing is our governments also should put more effort into establishing proper communication with the society. Again, we should talk to people, to citizens. We should explain things to them, because there's a lot of things that cannot be told, right, due to the OPSEC. But on the other hand, we can establish proper communication with the society and explain, guys, yeah, we will have to raise our expenditures on, for example, defense budget, right? We will have to invest more into our defense, but this is necessary because, right? Because if it's not done, then all sorts of far left, far right marginal movements will use it for their own benefits. And of course, we all understand that whatever far left, far right movements we're talking about, in most cases, they receive salary in Russian rubles, right? So they will use it for their own benefits, and we cannot let it happen, because otherwise, the life as we know it will be completely destroyed, and it's very, very bad, especially for people in Europe. So proper communication must be established, and I really hope that officials will listen to us and they will put more effort into establishing proper communication, not Soviet stuff, Soviet type of communication like it always happens in bureaucratic systems, but literally proper, simple communication, explaining people their decisions in simple terms. And Europe can do that because generally all sorts of patriarchs of public relations and communications that exist out there, they mostly come from the West. And all the Russian communication experts who are now waging this informational warfare, they were studying Western PR specialists and communication experts. So we should do this yesterday if we want to survive. But one of the most important things here is that governments have resources that we don't have. And it doesn't matter how cool we are, how amazing, what type of amazing content we can produce on our tiny social platforms. It cannot be compared to what the governments can do. Therefore, we should find a way to work with the governments directly and advise them on how they can change things, because we as content creators, we have experience, and we can share our expertise on this. So governments must do this because they have resources, and they are obliged to defend their countries as much as they can. And the communication warfare is something that they should understand, and they should cooperate with us in this field, right? Because we have reach, we have good established communication with the society. We know what works, what doesn't work. We know the way Russians conduct their informational operations. So we can reverse engineer whatever informational campaigns they're making. And we can see a lot of good examples. For example, Bellingcat, for example, Inform Napalm in Ukraine, this amazing volunteer organization that debunks Russian fakes, of course, but also reverse engineers Russian communication strategies. They research all this stuff the same as we do. And this is why governments should put more effort into working together with the people who know this craft, let's call it this way. Guys, let's compare facts, all right? When Trump became a president of the United States, Russia started launching hundreds of drones and missiles at Ukraine, which is something that never happened before. Ukraine also had to withdraw from Kursk region again as soon as Trump became a president, and many other things, the civilian casualties as well, the strikes on the governmental quarters in Kyiv and things like that. If you want to find some sort of de-escalation that happened during Trump's presidency, I don't really see that. Please let me know maybe in the comments, because this is something that I don't see. What I see is completely opposite to that. I can see many very important institutions being closed, again, like the financing of fighting the disinformation, which is, again, something so important. And unfortunately, Trump and his followers, they pretend that disinformation is something that doesn't exist, that like they literally don't care about it. I spoke to several representatives of MAGA, and I can tell that they completely don't care about that. So like fanatically don't care. I mean fanatically. And unfortunately, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, specifically for United States and also for the West. As for the European leaders, I agree that some of them, of course, play behind the curtains, silicon curtains included, but they're politicians. Like, I can understand that, when a politician goes to a White House and meets Trump and starts kissing his rear, because they're politicians. Nothing changes if they do that. literally like they won't get sick. I mean, in this understanding, like this is their job, all right? They understand that this is the proper way to speak to this specific person, and this is what they do because this is best for their country. Unfortunately, what they do, in fact, is try not to make things worse because they see what Trump tried to do as soon as he became president, which was like introducing crazy tariffs against his closest neighbors like Canada and other things. So I can completely understand those politicians. This is their job, and I don't blame them. I only blame them for one thing, that in September 2025, we still don't have any working mechanisms to fight against the Russian and Chinese and Korean disinformation in our informational space. And as a result of that, we can see a growing number of pro-Russian talking heads. Tucker Carlson is there, in his around his recent episodes. He was admiring Putin so much. He said that Putin is very effective leader. So funny, to see a dude who was raised in the United States and he admires a bloody dictator who started several wars, killed thousands and, frankly speaking, hundreds of thousands of his own people, and rules his country for more than 20 years. Dude, you were born in the United States. Are you crazy? Speaking of those servicemen and servicewomen, I think, unfortunately, they don't understand. We all don't really understand that this is just the beginning of the process, because when you serve in an agency or in the army or in the state establishment, basically you just follow orders, and when you're ordered to do something, you just say yes, sir, and you do that. So not much they can do, unfortunately. And even if they push back today, tomorrow things can be completely different. There are no people that cannot be supplanted, right? Um, Russians say, незаменимых нет. Yeah, absolutely. So, good people or conscious people that still obey law and dedicate their life to protecting rights of their citizens, they might find themselves supplanted by people who don't have such problems,
Yeah.
right? So again, the situation is very, very difficult. But I am not in the United States. My friends who live there and generally people who live there, they have better idea of what is going on there. And I can only wish them luck, because in Ukraine we already experienced something like that. Basically, we were repressed for being Ukrainians during Soviet times. During the Yanukovych times, we had problems with corruption, with cops who didn't do their duties, with thugs that were literally hired to beat up people who wanted to live freely in a democratic country. And we already went through this. And I don't really know how will it all end. Will it end peacefully or not? We will see. I really wish, for the American people to go through this period, become more wise than they were, because we all need that. We all need to evolve, and next time avoid mistakes they did previously.
Brutal.
That's absolutely brutal, my friend. So, yeah, returning to our topic, the darker one, unfortunately, we can see something as pessimistic as growing Russian strikes, but at the same time, we can also see something as optimistic as symmetric Ukrainian response. And we can also see that Ukraine is currently not only striking the Russian military plants and factories and Russian oil refineries, but Ukraine is also responding symmetrically against the Russian infrastructure because that's basically what Russians deserved. All right, like we've had enough. At the end of the fourth year of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we've had enough. So please taste the same medicine, all right? And basically, this morning on the stream, I said that one thing that Russia actually achieved in Ukraine is that basically turning Ukraine from a random, Eastern European country into the world's leading producer and manufacturer of modern combat drones. And I believe that we will see that this production expanding and Ukrainian strikes growing. President Zelensky announced that he will present a new set of sanctions against the Russian shadow fleet. At the same time, we saw those amazing videos of Ukrainian naval drones attacking Russian shadow fleet tankers in the Black Sea. So I have some understanding of what sort of sanctions he's talking about. But they work one way or another. Those sanctions work, and of course, besides the fact that Russia is growing its capacity of striking Ukraine, growing its capacity of overloading Ukrainian air defenses and tricking Ukrainian air defenses and building drones that are reaching the targets, unfortunately. But at the same time, we can see the symmetrical response. And the more Russia is attacking Ukraine, the more Ukraine will be responding against Russia. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of drones that will be flying towards Russian cities, striking Russian objects. And the most important is that they will be striking what actually feeds the Russian war machine, not like kindergartens like Russians enjoy doing in Ukraine, but actually more and more Russian military factories, which means that more Russian employees will lose their job and will not find the other one, all right, because Russia is running on the military economy right now, on the wartime economy. And we will see more responses like that. So even though Russian attempts are terrifying, but Ukrainian symmetrical response is terrific. So the impact, there was a Russian military factory, the factory that produces both fertilizer and explosives. It was hit. Also, a Russian heating and power station was hit. Voronezh lost a bunch of electricity and heating as well, and water happens. All right, if you attack a neighboring country. And also there was a bunch of successful attacks on the Russian oil rig in the Caspian Sea. That one was very interesting because we can see that the legendary security service of Ukraine, the SBU, can reach very, very far. And there's no way the Russian terrorists can. Yeah, and at the same time, we don't see anything like that happening on the Ukrainian territory. We can see a bunch of teenagers being used as suicide bombers by Russians. We can see children being literally blackmailed online so they comply with the Russian terrorists, make bombs and blow up themselves. But that's basically, again, that's nothing new. We already saw ISIS doing that. We already saw Al-Qaeda doing that. So basically, those Russian methods are not new to the world. We know that this is exactly what the terrorists do. But the Russians are unable to conduct anything like that on the Ukrainian territory, well, basically for obvious reasons. And Ukraine is not only, let's say, improving in terms of drone warfare. Ukraine is basically the country that creates the foundation for the drone warfare, because When we talk about drones, of course, there are different types of them, and they all serve different purpose. For example, if you are at a position on the front line and you have some kind of sector to defend, of course, you won't be using, huge Shahed-like drones to strike Russians there in the area. You will be using smaller drones, FPV drones, or drones that drop charges. There are bigger drones that drop charges that are used not on tactical but on a higher on the operational level. There are drones that can be used strategically, right? And basically, Ukraine is creating the doctrine of the drone warfare, and this is something absolutely crazy. But I think that in future we'll be studying that in the history books, all right, in the military institutions. So Ukraine also develops missiles. As we know, we have several types of them, starting from the legendary Neptune that sunk the Moskva cruiser, right? And even those missiles, they were also modified because Ukrainian engineers tried to find a way to turn those missiles from, let's say, operational or tactical missiles to strategic missiles. So they modified the shape, the size of it, modified the warhead. So now they can fly more than 300 kilometers, as we know from what we can tell from the information that is available, and they carry much larger warheads, and they can also be utilized not only against ships but also against land targets, which is again very important. And Flamingo was the next step because this missile can fly much longer distances, carry much bigger warhead that weighs something like one ton or something. But
1300.
yeah, absolutely. And this means that it can be utilized not only against targets like airports, like open targets, like airports, buildings, facilities, and ammo storages, but also against targets that are hard to reach, like underground facilities, underground factories, like one in Alabuga, that is well within the reach of Ukrainian flamingos. But it was a step forward, not only in terms of range and warhead, but also in terms of cost effectiveness, because this missile is extremely simple. It's very easy to produce. As we know, Russia is still struggling, producing their Iskander missiles, their Caliber missiles. Ukraine produces 7 Flamingos a day at this point. And when the Associated Press came with this report on these missiles, we already knew that Ukraine produced something more than 400 missiles at that very moment. So cost effectiveness is, of course, very important when you are fighting against an enemy that has enormous advantage over yourself in terms of resources, 100 times more resources, 10 times more men, and things like that. It's extremely important to use resources and costs effectively and outplay, be better than your enemy. And Ukraine is amazing in this regard. Ukraine is absolutely amazing. I agree on that. One of the reasons why Russians strike civilians, and I think I already mentioned that several times in my streams, is an attempt to stretch Ukraine's air defense. So they know that, for example, if you have 5 Patriot launchers, all right, you can situate them around a specific object. And this object, of course, will be harder to reach because the air defense will be much harder to penetrate. That is why they strike deliberately residential areas of Kiev, for example, or Kharkiv, because they know that we will be using some of those launchers relocating them to defend those residential areas. That generally, again, doesn't make any sense, striking them at all. Ukrainians will not, give up. Oh my God, my house is destroyed. Let's just give up, or like, oh my God, my whole family died. I think it's time to just give up and let them kill us peacefully, right? No, it won't happen. Also, Ukrainians, even though we will be much more irritated by those strikes, but they will never force Ukrainians to capitulate. They will not destroy our morale. Because even now, even though we have victims, but compared to, for example, bombing of London during the World War II, the numbers are like incomparable, right? In the United Kingdom, how many people died in just 5 years
Oh,
of looking at that, you understand that even from this standpoint, Russian strikes on the civilian quarters, they are not extremely successful, right? Um, even though there are already cases of Russia using cluster munitions in striking civilians, specifically like it was in Sumy when they hit the downtown with plenty of people going to church, and they used cluster munitions against those people. That is literally the munitions that are designed to eliminate large number of personnel or literally people. So there are already such cases. We already understand that it's not just they're trying to send missiles there, so we would spend more of our anti-air missiles. But that is a deliberate strategy of eliminating Ukrainian people.
yeah.
But at the same time, the only reason they do that is because they want Ukraine to run out of Ukrainian air defenses, specifically the anti-air missiles, because they know how much we value the human life. They know that we will definitely take a bunch of anti-air systems. We will relocate them and make sure that they protect the residential areas that are full of people. And this is why the defense of our strategic objects, our airfields, our ammo storages, will be much, less effective than it was before. So that is the only reason they're shooting at civilians because they want to stretch our air defense. They were striking Kryvyi Rih so many times starting 2022, and Kryvyi Rih basically there's nothing there. There's a bunch of quarries. There's like metal quarries. There's coal and things like that. But generally speaking, why do you like would you strike a quarry if you were like a cent person? Of course, no. Besides that, there's nothing in Kryvyi Rih. Kryvyi Rih is a birthplace of Ukrainian President Zelensky, of course. But again, that is like symbolism that, all right, we can speculate if it means something or not. But the very fact that they literally strike this city means that they want Ukraine to relocate our air defense there. Yeah, absolutely. Ukraine is not striking Russian civil population deliberately because it makes no sense. First of all, Ukraine needs those weapons to strike Russian terrorists. All right. Like, what's the point of hitting a residential building if there's 100 of Russian soldiers hiding in barracks somewhere on the occupied territory? That is important. That is important because civilians don't capture the territory. Russian invaders do, and there's no point in striking them. In Russia's case, there's point in striking Ukrainian civilians because uh, they want to kill us one way or another, and also they want us to run out of missiles. It's an obvious fact. Um, what I wanted to mention is that Putin has several palaces, as for what we can tell from the available information. And of course, those are extremely well protected by the air defense. But besides that, Russia is a huge country, and defending that whole territory with air defense is very, very hard. However, there are still some people like Gubarev, like Baradai, sometimes they speak, the actual words.
Yes.
Of course, it's dangerous for Putin's regime, but it's not dangerous enough. And I think as soon as it becomes dangerous, they will just disappear, which is something they don't really want to do, to experience. And but there are such people, and it's really good. Again, among the followers of Strelkov Girkin, there is a lot of dissatisfied Russian fascists. They are extremely mad since the day Girkin went to jail, and they have several video blogs that, of course, they don't run them in English. I watch them from time to time. Sometimes it's interesting to hear what they say, how they justify this killing of my people. But on the other hand, they kind of, you can tell that they're mad, but they're afraid to say anything because they will follow Girkin to the jail, and they will end up being there. Yeah. Ukraine could do that partially effectively, I would say, but of course, the main thing that we lack at this point is support of international community, because only complete sanctions and isolation of Russia can basically destroy Putin's regime, which is the easiest way, actually, which is the easiest solution that we could have. But for reasons I cannot tell, because I'm not an economist and not a politician, it's not something that we will see in the future. As for where it goes, in my personal opinion, we will see more strikes happening, like General Budanov said, deeper and deeper, because Ukraine is gradually increasing the range of its drones and missiles, and we will see those strikes happening in the area of Kaspi. Kaspi is also important because Russia uses the Caspian Sea to trade with Iran, all sorts of weaponry and parts, and also the materials, how you call them in English, like oils and fuel and everything else.
Like resources and
Yes, exactly. So they're also being delivered by Caspian Sea between Iran and Russia. So that region is extremely important for Russian military industry, military production. And I think we will see more strikes happening there. Luckily for us, though, Russia concentrated majority of its strategic objects like refineries, military bases, ammo storages, more or less close to the European borders, because Russia, which was, I think, obvious always at all times, Russia always wanted to invade NATO countries. They have this, like, I don't know, complex. And that is why they located majority of their oil production and weaponry production relatively close to the European borders. That is why it's not really hard to strike those targets. What hard is to evade their air defense, which again, Russians are trying to improve one way or another. They're building different nets around their oil refineries in order to catch drones before they reach the targets. They improve their air defense by launching a bunch of mobile groups, by the way, like Ukraine did in 2022, when this threat started emerging of Russian drones and missile strikes. We established a lot of mobile groups that were defending our key cities and stuff. And Russians are basically doing the same today. So they are improving that. They also have a lot of different electronic warfare equipment that they also utilize during the drone strikes. However, in the future, we will see a lot of cases of growing Russian irritation, right, and dissatisfaction, because we will see growing deficit of fuel in Russia. Again, Russians are not really happy to fly their airlines at this point for two reasons. Reason number one is because whenever there's a drone strike or missile strike taking place on the Russian territory, usually they don't allow the passenger aircraft to fly. And the reason for that is because they don't want to hit their own airplanes, which is something that happened multiple times in Russia. And the reason number two, of course, is because there are those harsh sanctions on Russian aviation, and big companies like Boeing or Airbus don't service their airplanes. They have to supplant their details with something made in like barns all over the Russia. I remember when Putin had this speech where he said that we have to supplant service and parts from companies like Boeing and Airbus with something that we produce in Russia, which basically means that Dядя Vanya with напильник and пила will be пилить and строгать, some parts for like Boeings, which we already see happening, which is crazy. Guys, you have to understand this. If you have an airline uh, which utilizes aircraft like Boeing and Airbus, you have to have several key things. One is updates, software updates, because there are IRAC circles, so-called AIRAC, that are basically huge databases, navigational databases of all the waypoints and navigational aids that are used by the aircraft around the world, right? So they are being updated every specific period of time. You need to have those official updates, and you need to install them on the software used in your Boeing or Airbus, because Russia doesn't produce this software. And also, you need specific parts made from specific materials. There are screws or bolts used in the aircraft. They are not the same as your bolts in your hardware store. They cost much more because they're made from specific metals that Russian way is basically call a bunch of dядя Vovas with screwdrivers. They would find the necessary shit and in a local hardware store, and basically fix that Boeing or Airbus that hadn't seen service for more than 3 years. And that is basically the reason why we can see so many accidents happening in the Russian aviation. The number of failures, basically, that we can check from the open sources, right? In Russian aviation, I think the last number that I saw, the latest number that I saw was like they grew 160%. All right. Um, which is crazy. It's like you don't really want to fly that airplane anywhere. It's dangerous for your health, and that is why Russian passengers are extremely disappointed and frustrated, because first thing, you have to wait for days in Pulkovo or Skolkovo or whatever. And second thing is that even if you get on board, it's not necessarily fact that you will land safely, all right? So those airplanes are dangerous, which is, by the way, the reason why we don't see Russian airplanes flying anywhere in Europe. Not because, European countries said Russia bad, don't fly in our skies. No, it's literally because those airplanes are unsafe to fly. And not a single sane person or politician or decision maker will allow those aircraft flying over his citizens. Those experts should literally learn more about Russia, all right? They should watch Russian videos, Russian content. They should get more acquainted with Russia because you don't really judge Russia by watching, I don't know, Mikhalkov's movies or like Siberian Barber. Or yeah, you have to learn Russia by watching their content to understand how much they hate you in your wealthy and well-fed society on the West, right? Because they don't have any of that. And you also have to find like real people who know something about Russia. Uh, that is the reason why they are so much wrong about Russia's real capabilities. It's either they consider Russia at all this absolutely amazing, beautiful country, like Tucker Carlson, all right, so with those amazing moving steps in a grocery store. He should go to like Kaufland in Germany. Seriously, there's like they're everywhere here. And on the other side of the spectrum, there is Joe Rogan, always like extremely afraid and panicking. Oh my God, Russia! Oh my God, what if they hit us with nuclear weapons? What if they are tough? They are so tough. You see, they're fighting 3 years straight and still gaining territory. You know, and those people are ridiculous because they have so little knowledge about what Russia is. I don't know if it's really them to blame because Russia is really good about, in terms of spreading disinformation and their campaigns aimed at improving or establishing their image are very good, actually, right? So they're professional. Um, at the same time, people must understand the reality. They must understand what the real face of fascism looks like. Because take that recent example of Russia's strikes on European and American companies in Ukraine. The very fact that they strike those companies, not even that, the very fact that they strike civilians because they want Ukraine to spend the stockpile of anti-air missiles. Decision is very simple. Let us strike civilians. Okay, Ukrainians will be protecting them, and the defense of their strategic objects will be smaller, right? The very idea, like what sort of freaking maniac born, I don't know, in a barn is that? To literally decide to strike residential quarters, residential areas, because they want Ukraine to spend more missiles to intercept those.
Yeah.
That is the thing. That is like cold-blooded, calculation. That is something. I don't know. The famous anonymous in Russia said
Yeah.
that Russianism is basically a chaos of shit and death. That is literally the case. One thing people started to forget is basically how much atrocious Russia is, because since I don't know, since times of the World War II, nothing changed much. They are still atrocious. They still commit war crimes against civilian population. Nothing changed, but we don't talk much about it. Most probably the reason is that our society doesn't really like bad news. We would rather watch some kind of action movie or like something extremely full of gore and blood and massacre in a fiction than facing the same in the real life. And the reason for that is because we don't really like, real stress. We like to escape somewhere and find the stress that motivates us rather than something, like what is happening in Ukraine. people out there who say Ukrainians cooperated with Hitler, SS Galicia, and things like that. Guys, Hitler was Stalin's ally, I think, even before he became friends with Mussolini. They were allies, and they were responsible for the beginning of the World War II, when Russia and Germany basically torn Poland apart. This is something you should, I don't know, Google, right? So to evolve a bit, or Google about the Russian Liberation Army that also was managed and controlled by Third Reich. And the number of those people, according to different estimates, could be bigger than 1 million Russian men with swastikas. That was Russian Liberation Army acting on the territory of Russia, and it's a historical fact. By the way, using the same flag as Russia uses today. Yeah, yeah, that is a very interesting question. Um, People have to find more information like that, or at least there must be more people who give them this information, because this is something extremely important for self-development and self-awareness at all. First of all, we gotta look at all the mistakes we did in Ukraine and try not to repeat them in Europe. And second, we gotta motivate people, because one thing that doesn't work specifically with Europeans is telling them that, guys, if you are attacked by Russians, all right, you gotta have your emergency backpack and things like that, because people usually go like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna go to Lidl like in a half an hour with my family, and then we're gonna drive to like a zoo. What are you talking about, dude? That doesn't work. But what works is actually telling them what Russia really is, how to destroy it, what's its weak spots. And because we know that Russia is very, very quick and very fast in terms of developing weapons, adapting in order to destroy somebody, but not really good at patching its own gaps, all right? And we gotta explain to people what Russia really is, and how to destroy it, how to prevent it from taking over. So that's like, you're asking a captain such strategic questions that I cannot really explain based on my experience and my level, but there are some obvious things like this that we can try and do, and we can do that. But the most important thing is a lot of Europeans are highly, highly demoralized right now from the things that are happening in their countries, even despite there is no war. But the gas, the fuel became a bit more expensive. The prices became a bit more expensive, right? People earn, well, basically like not 6,000 euro a month, but they have to spend a bit, a bit more. So they have like not 3,000 euro they can enjoy, but like 2,500 and things like that. And people are extremely demoralized. At the same time, we can see that the marginal movements that are growing like mushrooms all around Europe, they are very much dedicated to their task. So not only they're supported by the terrorist federation, as we know, but they're very, very much dedicated. We have to be dedicated as well. If we want to survive, we got to be more dedicated than people who want to kill us, right? It's logical. But we will never actually mobilize ourselves before it hits. And again, that is something that I saw in Ukraine many, many times. 2022, on the night between 23rd and 24th February, people, including myself, all right, did a dinner, all right? They cooked food, they had dinner with their families, they watched TV, they went to bed completely conscious and calm and relaxed, even though they saw it coming, me included. Seriously, I was watching those videos. I realized that tomorrow there might be war. Okay, I gotta finish it in my eating my plov because it will get spoiled. So people will never get mobilized until it hits, and it's a natural thing, I believe, because it requires some specific skills to be prepared all the time. All right, cops are prepared all the time, military prepared all the time. Most of the general population is not. But when it hits, in many cases, general population can demonstrate such miracles of resilience and union and solidarity, so you will be impressed yourself. That is why we can prepare just so much, but when it hits, we can only rely on the society that we are part of. So first of all, what I see is that the society in Germany is preparing very slowly. All right. Again, the services that are required to be prepared, they're preparing a bit more faster. We're talking about the Bundeswehr and police and military police, but society has its own problems, all right? Like in any other country. But what we can do, I will tell you easily. Okay, Ukrainian fighting drone simulator. Just a second. It's called Ukrainian Fight Drone Simulator. A game designed by the Ukrainian developers, available on Steam since, I believe, yesterday. Buy it, fly it. The graphics are amazing, and enjoy. And this is not just a game, it's a simulator, all right? You gotta try. Developers are Ukrainian. Most probably very soon on my channel I'll have some kind of review or interview with those guys. They not only provide this to the military guys, not only to the Ukrainian defenders, but now they also provide this game to the general population. So if you want to learn how to defend your home sometime in the future, and besides that have immense pleasure of eliminating pigs and degenerates on your screen, buy it and fly it. You will enjoy.
I'm proud to say that this series of Ukrainian Advent interviews is supported by The Steel Porcupine, a unique and powerful film about a country that refuses to lie down, a people who turn themselves into a fortress of needles when Russian tanks rolled in. The Steel Porcupine is an unforgettable cinematic experience that exposes Russia's campaign of extermination in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people's spirit to resist and prevail. It follows soldiers, volunteers, and ordinary people who decided that survival meant resistance, not submission. Introduced by Nate Vance, a former US Marine who fought for 3 years in Ukraine's defense, this documentary moves from the Bucha massacre to genocide endorsing Russian state propaganda media. The Steel Porcupine is a love letter to Ukraine and a battle cry. It is free to watch and has already had a great impact on policymakers as well as activists. There is, of course, a link in the description of this video and in the comments as well. You can get to the website where you can see both the trailer and the film for free. Created by the makers of the acclaimed To the Zero Line, this is another film about humanity that clearly states there is no such thing as neutrality when war crimes are being committed systematically by Russia and on a scale in Europe only comparable to World War II. Set to a haunting soundtrack featuring music by Philip Glass and blending rare archival footage with original material. It is an impactful work of art and storytelling as well as being informative. I strongly recommend you watch it, but even the trailer itself is compelling.
I feel terrible about it because Ukraine is a very important country, and I feel a personal stake because I got them to agree to give up their nuclear weapons, and none of them believe that Russia would have pulled this stunt if Ukraine still had their weapons. And I believe Europe and the United States should continue to support Ukraine. There may come a time when the Ukrainian government believes that they can think of a peace agreement they could live with, but I don't think the rest of us should cut and run on them.
Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military have been underestimated for a period of several years now. And ultimately, I'm convinced from my reflections in observing from an intelligence standpoint that they will fight with their bare hands if they have to, if they don't have terms that are acceptable to an enduring peace.
So this is a design for a 3D printed drone frame. The engines are mounted here. The drone motors are mounted here and here and here. What I can do is export these shapes into the slicer.
This film has absolute moral clarity. It does not both sides the war. It does not use neutral language. This is a film that says clearly who invaded whom, who is killing whom, and who is standing on their own land, fighting back, showing why Ukrainians will bleed for every meter. This film is not meant to comfort you. It's meant to arm you with clarity, with solidarity, and with the stubborn, spiky hope that democracies can still fight back and win.
Children are not stupid. They're just small, right? They're just small versions of us. They know exactly who the threat is. There's almost no families within Ukraine who have not lost a family member or have had a family member maimed by Putin and his army.
The Ukrainian people are very resourceful and they're very determined, and they've got a very good reason to be determined. You know, Russia wants to exterminate the Ukrainian nation and just enslave it and absorb it. So they've got every reason to do everything necessary to win this war.
Putin was super clear when he started this war that the existence of Ukraine as a sovereign and free country was an unacceptable affront to Russian security. He will not stop until Ukraine isn't a country anymore.
We have to put Ukraine in a position of strength, that it has the means to fortify and protect itself from the economic survival to the military resilience. It's basically turning Ukraine into a steel porcupine that is indigestible for potential invaders.
Poets have spent their entire lives trying to explain the horrors of war. I am no poet. Anyone who has seen what I have seen would probably think differently about the situation in Ukraine and what the Russians are doing.